Welcome to the Bossier City Regular Council meeting. Today's Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. We're going to have the invocation by Council Member Chris Smith and the Pledge of Allegiance by Council Member Vince Maggio.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We come to you today. Lord, first I'd like to pray for the family and the friends of Jackie Lovelace, Lord. We lost a great citizen of Bossier City over the weekend, Lord, and we just pray for comfort for his family at the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office, and all of his friends in Bossier City as we mourn this loss. Lord, I pray that you be with each and every one of us in this room today as we conduct the business of the people of Bossier City. Lord, that you will be with us as we depart here. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Please follow me saying the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Montgomery.
Here.
Mr. Hammonds.
Here.
Mr. Darby.
Here.
Mr. Free.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Maggio.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
All present. Council, in accordance with Louisiana open meetings laws and the adopted Bossier City Council meeting rules resolution, the City Council asks for order and decorum at our meetings. Please silence your cell phones. Anyone wishing to address the council on any agenda items may approach and state their names and address for the record and shall be permitted 3 minutes to make their comments on the particular item that's up for discussion with up to 4 speakers per side. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who shall become boisterous while addressing the council shall be forthwith by the President Pro Tem barred from further audience before the council unless permission to continue be granted by a majority of vote of the council. All remarks shall be addressed to the council as a body and not to any member thereof. No question shall be asked a council person or the mayor except through the meeting chair. All other audience members are asked to please observe the meeting quietly. City Council has appointed the city marshals as the sergeant at arms, and they have been instructed to maintain decorum and ask anyone in violation to step out of the meeting.
All right, council. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 29th, 2023 regular council meeting. Dispense with the reading.
So move.
Second.
First by Councilman Williams, second by Councilman Smith. Questions from the audience? Please cast your vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, council, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. President, I'd like to delete item number 4 from the agenda.
Second.
All right. Item number 4, deletion. First by Councilman Williams, second by Councilman Montgomery. Questions from the audience? Name and address.
West Marriott, Sobo Live, 4308 Parkway Drive. Mr. President, members of the City Council, I stand before you today not just as a concerned citizen, but for the thousands in Bossier City who are baffled, frustrated, and frankly outraged at the disdain you've shown for democratic principles. Let's be direct, the mayor's term limits resolution has a place on today's agenda, and it must stay there. Removing it is not only a gross misuse of authority, but a direct violation of the Bossier City Charter, a charter, I might add, each one of you swore to uphold. I don't need to remind you, but I will. This charter expressly states that upon receiving a certified petition, you, the City Council, have 2 choices. You must either pass without veto the requested ordinance or put the issue to ballot within 90 days. I'm sure you've all got calendars. The 30 days to put the measure and pass it and have it without veto has come and gone, and here we are with nothing but stonewalling and silence. Your inaction itself is an action, a loud, resounding no to the will of the people. Your job isn't to debate the merits of the law when the law is unequivocal. Your job is to enact the will of the people as clearly indicated in over 2,977 certified signatures demanding term limits. Your failure to do so makes a mockery not just of your roles as public servants, but as the democratic process itself. This isn't a question of policy or even of term limits. This is a question of integrity, of whether the council respects the rule of law and the constituents you claim to represent. To remove the mayor's resolution from the agenda is to trample on the faith of the citizens of Bossier City and the democratic fabric that binds all Americans. The clock is ticking, council members. You've exhausted 30 days doing nothing. With every tick, you're not merely wasting time, but you're continuing to erode public trust and degrade the democratic foundations of this city. Keep the mayor's term limits resolution on the agenda, and for heaven's sakes, do your job. Vote on it. Mr. President, I end with this. If you don't have the courage to stand up and do what's right, maybe it's time to make room for those who do. The choice is yours, but remember, inaction is also a choice that exposes not just your view on term limits, but your view on democracy itself. Thank you.
David Crockett, 653 Dumaine Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. These are times that try men's souls. Thomas Paine, late December 1776. A Bossier City that I've become familiar with, especially over term limits, sent me some comments because he couldn't attend. He quotes from Section 501 of the city charter, where the petition contains a request that the ordinance be submitted to a vote of the people, the city council shall forthwith, after the registrar of voters has attached his or her certificate to the petition, the city shall call an election to be held within 90 days thereafter. That's from the document that councilors you swore to uphold when you took your oath of office. It doesn't say you will call an election, but only if you think the certified petition is legitimate. It doesn't say you will call an election, but only if you think the city won't be sued by doing it. No, the charter says if you receive the certified petition, you have to call an election. It's not optional. You have the charter. You have the certified petition, he says. You have the vote to call an election. Either you vote to call a referendum on the people's or petition language, or you violate your oath of office, which signals a disdain for the rule of law that forfeits any moral claim you have to the oath of office. Jeff Sadow. Now my few comments. For those who missed Micah McCarty last Wednesday, wow, what a powerful program they had. I want to share a few references of the Declaration of Independence that was read by Stephen Parr on that show.
Specific to the agenda.
Absolutely. This is about what it's all about. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. That whenever, this is absolutely in support of the mayor's resolution. That deriving their just powers from the consent of the government, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers such form as to them shall be most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Mayor, thank you very much for keeping this on the agenda. We might need to keep this going all the way through the date that this was supposed to be on the election. It needs to keep coming up. We need your support. Thank you.
Additional comments? All right, go ahead and cast your votes.
We're going to have a chance for comment?
About,
The council?
sure, go ahead.
I'm just checking. Why are we removing this? I feel if we're going to remove this one, we might as well go ahead and remove number 5 also. Can nobody give me an answer? I think I'm due an answer. I deserve an answer.
Mr. Jacobs, I'd like to, if you'll please respond to the fact of inaction and the action that we, upon your advice, are taking to move forward relative to this petition.
You have a petition.
Before you start, Mr. Jacobs.
Please, I have the floor, and I've asked the man a question. You yielded the floor to me, is that not correct, Mr. Free?
First of all,
I
you
yield.
don't have to yell at me. You can
I
talk
have
to
the
me,
floor.
but you're not going to yell at
I
me.
have the floor.
Talk all you want.
Good. Now, Mr. Jacobs, you have the floor.
again, and I think we've been through this at multiple council meetings. We have a petition that was presented to the council that was certified by the Register of Voters. The issue is, was the petition properly certified? It is my opinion, it was Ms. Bell's opinion, the outside counsel, that the petition was improperly certified due to the lack of information that was in the petition that is required pursuant to 18:3, which is the Louisiana Election Code, which is the date of birth of each signer or signatory. It doesn't say, there are 7 things for a registrar of voter that must be contained in the petition to be properly certified. If in fact you're lacking in one of those, and all the Attorney General's opinions that have come before this bear that out, plus the case law that's out there, if you're lacking one of those pieces of information, then the petition is improperly certified, and the process itself, it's step number 1, has not been followed correctly. I understand that there's a difference of opinion as to what's required and what's not required. But it says what's required. It doesn't say that the year of birth or the date of birth must be easily ascertainable or must be able to be determined. It says it has to be included. And therefore, in my opinion, Ms. Bell's opinion, and we did ask the Attorney General to weigh in on the issue. Unfortunately, due to a conflict, he has refused to do so. So until this issue is resolved and there's a difference of opinion, then it could come up at any time. It could come up a week from now. It could come up a year from now. It could come up 2 years from now if this term limit amendment to the charter ordinance, whatever it is passed by the people. It could come up 10 years from now. And so if the process was started improperly and presented to the city improperly, then that landmine never goes away until there's a definitive determination. Now, as I understand it, and we've talked about retroactivity and would this would take into effect. It's purported to take effect, I think, approximately 2 years from now, maybe a little less, when everybody's up for reelection. So why don't we find out now? All right. The Term Limits Coalition, or we haven't had anybody who's come to the city with a writ of mandamus asking the court to make a determination. Therefore, if the city asks the court to make a determination, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. It can be placed on the ballot well before the expiration of the current terms. And if it's passed by the people, then it could go into effect. Essentially, you're losing nothing now. That if you have this determination before the expiration of the current terms of the mayor and the city council, then once that determination is made, then you either place it on the ballot if the petition was properly certified and I'm wrong. If I'm right, then, if term limits want to be imposed, either by referendum or by a charter commission, they can be imposed. But I think we'd have an answer back fairly quickly, at least from the trial court, probably before the end of the year.
So then what are you gonna do? You gonna send it to the trial court?
There are 2 things that are on the agenda, as I understand them. One is to request the Registrar of Voters to decertify the petition due to what both legal counsel, myself and Ms. Bell, deem as improper. If she so refuses to do that, then I'm asking for consent from the city council to file an action for a declaratory judgment, put it in front of a judge, let the judge look at it and say, thumbs up, thumbs down.
So by us doing that, we're pretty much telling the Registrar of Voters that she doesn't know how to do her job, once again.
I think we had this discussion.
Yeah, we did.
Last meeting, and I believe, yes, I'm not telling the registrar of voters, I think she made an honest mistake. I don't think she had any nefarious motive. I don't think she was willfully ignorant. I believe she made a mistake.
No, that's all I got. We could sit here and argue about it all afternoon. That's fine. Go ahead.
Yes,
Thank you, President. Basically, why I'm putting this up there is just to let the citizens have a voice, to let them hear what, what they believe in. Not one time have I seen someone come up to the podium and say, hey, y'all need to work there all your life, and that we don't need no term limits. Everybody's been saying they want term limits. I just say, let the people, they voted us in here, let them speak, okay? That's all I'll say.
additional questions, comments from the council? Sure.
Thank you. John Settle, 1915 Citizens Bank Drive. The only question that I have is if there would be a time limit, if you're going to adopt number 5, if there would be a time limit for the clerk to, the registrar to respond, and then also would there be a time period in number 6? In other words, would you give X days to the registrar, and then if nothing happens or it doesn't happen the way Mr. Jacobs believes appropriate, then that he would have a certain amount of time to file? I think if not, these things could kind of drag on without any sunset. So that's my only thought or request or suggestion. Thank you, gentlemen.
Answer for that?
I think the appropriate thing would be to address those issues when we get to number 5 and number 6.
Okay. All right, let's cast our vote to amend the agenda.
Motion carries.
All right, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second. Second.
First by Councilman Montgomery, second by Councilman Williams.
Real quick, Mr. President, Madam Clerk, I see the news media is looking at the vote on the
Yes.
screen.
Trying to get it to show up. There we go.
All right, comments from the audience on approving the amended agenda.
I made the motion, I'm sorry.
Mr. Montgomery first, second by Councilman Williams. All right, Cash.
I guess I need a clarification. Dave Crockett, 653 Dumaine Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. You say, I'm wanting to make sure I don't step over any bounds on whether I can comment on the comments that were just made, because my comment to that would be that by doing this and taking this off the agenda, the people are losing. We say no one is losing, the people are losing. So taking this off of the agenda, which I think is the subject, but not any one of those cases that you've looked at use voter ID, so the people are losing. When we went out and we stayed at the door with these people and got their voter ID, and that included all this information. These are your elected officials. These are the mayors, people that are not elected officials, electors. They took the time to sit there and do the extra work to give a voter ID. That's what's missing here. Not a single person in here other than 2 councilmen, which I won't name specifically, are mentioning that we use voter ID. We used what the registrar knew the best to give us at the time so they could verify signatures. The losers are the people.
All right, additional questions or comments from the council? All right, we're voting to accept the agenda as amended.
Motion carries.
All right, any ceremonial matters?
No, sir.
New business.
Introduce an ordinance to approve report of change order number 10 for the LTRI Louisiana Technology Research Institute Bossier with an increase in project cost of $87,170.17 and to declare the project complete. First reading.
So moved.
Second.
First by Councilman Smith, second by Councilman Williams. Comments from the audience? Comments from the council?
Yeah, Mr. Rauschenbach, do you mind explaining what this change order is for?
So as you see there, that is the last change order and declaring the project complete. There are several items on there. An elevator, cellular DI, extra AV items, audiovisual equipment, furniture hookups, card readers, and a few other items specifically to what Louisiana Tech and others needed for the facility. Of all of the funds, approximately 15,000 of that will be Bossier City funds. The remainder will be paid by Louisiana Tech.
Okay. Thank you.
And if you haven't been out there, it's a spectacular facility. It's beautiful.
Hopefully I'll get an invite.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I believe the Bossier City portion of that, as the vast majority of the funds will be reimbursed to Bossier City by the state of Louisiana.
Thank you.
Do we have a time frame on that?
We hope to get,
Well, no, they're required to reimburse us due to the various agreements. It's generally, 60 to 90 days once we submit the request for reimbursement.
All right, cast your vote.
Motion carries. Introduce an ordinance amending ordinance 82 of 2023 that declared that an emergency did exist in the city of Bossier City which affected property, public health, and safety due to the requirement to restore a collapsed sewer main along Pardot Lane, adding an additional $50,000 to the project to come from the sewer capital contingency funds. First reading.
So moved.
second.
First by Councilman Smith, second by Councilman Darby. Comments from the audience? Oh, Maggio?
That's okay.
My correction, please. First by Councilman Maggio. Good job. Second by Councilman Darby. Comments from the audience? Comments or questions from the council? Cast your vote.
Motion carries. Adopt a resolution authorizing and approving the engagement of Bingham Arbitrage Rebate Services, Inc. to provide professional arbitrage rebate services to the city of Bossier City. First and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
First by Councilman Smith, second by Councilman Williams. Comments from the audience? Questions from the council? Cast your vote.
Motion carries. Adopt a resolution asking for the Bossier Parish Register of Voters to decertify the petition from the Bossier Term Limits Coalition calling for a special election for term limits for the Bossier City Council and Bossier City Mayor due to the petition failing to meet all requirements of Louisiana Revised Statute 18:3. First and final reading.
So move. Second.
First by Councilman Williams, second by Councilman Montgomery. Comments from the audience?
West Marriott, Sobo Lot 4308 Parkway Drive. Good afternoon again. Today I'd like to discuss an utterly ridiculous proposition, but strangely not the most ridiculous item on Bossier City's agenda today. The proposed resolution asking for the Registrar of Voters to decertify the petition from the Bossier Term Limits Coalition. First, it's important to understand there's no legal statutory authority that allows the registrar of voter to decertify a petition. The Louisiana Revised Statutes simply do not provide for such an action. Asking for decertification under the guise of Revised Statute 18.3 misconstrues the law and sets a dangerous precedent. This very recommendation by our city attorney should call into question his ability to navigate the basic tenets of Louisiana law. Secondly, legal experts consulted by Sobo Live from across the state have clarified that Louisiana Revised Statute 18.3 does not apply universally to every petition. Where cities have their own charters outlining the specifics for their petitions, those provisions take precedence. The Bossier City Charter has explicit requirements for how petitions must be addressed. Therefore, any attempt to use Revised Statute 18.3 as a blanket justification for decertification is flawed. It's a ridiculous proposition to ignore our city charter's requirement that are actually in black and white for a proposed course of action that doesn't exist in any legal or statutory framework. Thirdly, it's worth mentioning again and again and again that though the petition did not contain the birth year of the signatory, it did include voter IDs. These are unique, personally identifiable numbers linked to each voter ID's file. This file contains all the necessary information, including name, address, precinct, date of birth, and their signature. Our registrar of voters, Stephanie Agee, and her staff personally verified each of the 2,977 signatures on the petition. The petition met and exceeded verification standards, ensuring that each signature was legitimate and valid. To propose decertifying a petition that aligns with the city charter's guidelines and has been verified by the registrar is a slap in the face to every voter in Bossier City and continues the pattern of reckless disregard for the law by this council. There is no possible future where the registrar of voters decertifies a certified petition, regardless of what you've been told. For these reasons, I strongly urge the City Council to vote against this resolution. Every single vote for this ridiculous resolution is a vote against the people of Bossier City and a nail in the coffin of your political career.
Additional comments?
John Settle, 1915 Citizens Bank Drive. Again, I would suggest or request that there might be a deadline for this to response that's requested. That way, I think it would be clear then what actions should be taken by the city attorney, but I just think that would probably be appropriate if y'all, for your consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs, first of all, I think, and Phyllis, if we change this, we'd have to put it back on in 2 weeks? No, because it's a resolution?
Yes, sir, it's a resolution, so you can make an amendment to it and.
So what's your,
I anticipate that if the council approves the resolution, that I'll have a letter out probably by, I would say, noon tomorrow. I was anticipating, giving, a work week, 5 business days to respond. If there wasn't a response, then depending on what happens with the second resolution, moving forward in that way.
David Crockett, 653, 653 Dumaine Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. Again, I have a ghost guest, Jeff Sadow. He says, I hope it's clear to all counselors that a vote for this item absolutely drips of irony and hypocrisy. Great minds think alike. That's you and Jeff, not me. Over the past month or more, we've heard the pious speeches about how we have to be sure with the petition and the process to bring about a referendum on its contents has followed the law exactly as written. Well, I would also point out with Jeff that 5.01 doesn't give reference to 1803 or any of this guidance either. So we're told nothing to do with the issue of term limits, but seeking a neutral application of the law. Now you have before you an item which abandons all of that to reveal the previous pristine proclamations were nothing more than hot air. Nowhere in the charter, nowhere in statute, and nowhere in the Constitution is there any mention that the registrar of voters can decertify the petition already certified, much less outline a process to do that, as this resolution demands from the Bossier Parish Registrar. So, it's entirely invented out of thin air. Worse, it's undisputably extra legal, made up to accomplish an agenda. That agenda, of course, is to stop voters from having their chance to amend term limits into the charter. A vote for this jettisons any pretense of impartiality that you have on this matter. You vote for this request of the registrar to do something that she doesn't have the authority to do. So you're against term limits, and you are desperate to stop their amendment from getting into the charter. Vote for this, and we are little more than a boy who sees that he has no clothes on, which isn't flattering. It's not a thing to have to witness for more than one reason. That's from Jeff Sadow. I want to praise the Bossier Parish Registrar. There's a lot of insinuation that they did not do their job. She told me repeatedly that she could not give me legal advice. When I requested a copy of a past petition, just as if I had done an information request or anything else, she gave me a copy of a past petition. That's what I followed. It had voter ID on it because nothing in your charter references 18.3. Nothing that the state gave me in that pamphlet that I followed meticulously as much as it's vague that I could to write a petition, nothing was clear about that. So basically, you're trying to put everything on the people when your charter does not specify details. So maybe your charter's flawed. Maybe the people didn't mess up. Because our petition included voter ID, the registrar was able to absolutely identify your electors. Thank you for covering that, Wes. I rather doubt that you'll be successful in this effort to decertify the petition. We contend that our petition is valid, and you're violating the city charter, as Jeff Sadow states. Thank you.
All right, additional comments?
Mr. Jacob, in the termination of decertification, another terminology would be invalidation of her opinion. What would be another term that would be?
Mr. Darby, I respectfully submit that there is a process for decertification. And again, if I'm wrong, or if the the registrar refuses to decertify the petition, then if the council sees fit to pass the second resolution, then we'll have a judge determine this. The city, the people that are in favor of term limits, the people that are against term limits are losing nothing. If the language purports, if passed by the electorate of Bossier City to go into effect at the end of this term, then we'll have an answer from the 26th JDC. We would have an answer from the Second Circuit well before then. And there is no process. Our charter is silent on what constitutes a certified petition. It says a petition certified by the Register of Voters. If our charter does not impose different requirements, then you fall back on the state statutes. And in this type of petition, this is not a petition that affects the sale of alcoholic beverages. In this type of petition, it has to follow the tenets of the revised statute 18:3, which requires certain information to be contained in the petition. It says shall be contained. It doesn't say to be determined. It doesn't say readily ascertainable. And so again, if this process doesn't take place, if we don't make a determination, a definitive determination of whether this petition is proper, then it floats around out there until somebody decides to challenge it. If the petition was improperly certified due to the lack of information, it's a nullity. And what the city council has before it is nothing. And that issue will never go away. Theoretically, it could come up 50 years from now if presented to the people in past. So it needs to be, and imagine you know, the mass chaos it would be, and I don't need to pick on you, but if you decided, if nothing were done, if we had no definitive determination, if what the council and the city had before it were presented to the people, and it passed, and you said, well, I don't think it was valid to begin with. So you go ahead, and then what happens? You qualify for an election. Then the electorate would have 7 days to challenge your qualifications. And then guess what we would have? We would have, here we go. At some point in time, that determination would have to be made. Can Mr. Darby run? Can he not run? Is this term limits, petition, was it started validly? And so if we determine this now, then we avoid all that mass confusion, mass chaos when your current term is up, when Mr. Free's current term is up, when Mr. Montgomery's term is up, when Mr. Williams' term is up. If Mr. Chris Smith decided 10 years from now, okay, he gets elected to 3 terms and this passes, what if he decides 10 years from now, if the issue is not decided? It could come up then. So again, I don't think the city is losing anything. If Ms. Agee, the Registrar of Voters, refuses to decertify the petition, then we simply file an action for declaratory judgment. We allow the court to make the determination. If the court says Jacobs is wrong, if Ms. Katie Bell is wrong, then it gets put on the ballot. And it gets presented to the people well before the expiration of this current term. And all this mass confusion at the end of these current terms is avoided.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs, for the elaboration. So, in summary, your terminology of decertification is a term that you want to stick with.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, first for the record, I'm never going to sue the city to run for a 4th term. But do you know, Mr. Jacobs, has there ever been a time where a registrar has had to decertify a petition because it was deemed faulty?
There is case law where a registrar has been forced to decertify the petition due to, I guess, form requirements, lack of information. Yes, sir.
Additional comments from the council? Cast your vote.
Motion carries. Adopt a resolution authorizing the city attorney to take legal action to determine the validity of the certification of the petition of the Bossier Term Limits Coalition. First and final reading.
So move.
Second.
First by Councilman Darby, second by Councilman Maggio. Comments from the audience?
Before we begin, Madam Clerk, it appeared that you had the vote for the mayor's agenda item on the screen when the votes were just cast. Again, West Marriott Sobo Live, 4308 Parkway Drive. Again, I'm not going to mince words, but I'll be as blunt as council rules allow. Now we're talking about adopting a resolution that gives the city attorney the authority to take legal action and determine the validity of the petition from the Bossier Term Limits Coalition. Maybe I missed something, but I didn't think it was in our city attorney's job description to determine if petition was certified. That's the job of our registrar of voters. And her signature affixed to the petition and her cover letter and the certification stated it's certified. So let's stick within the bounds of existing case law. So what exactly have we been doing since the petition was delivered on July 10th? It's now September 5th, and we've seen zero action in the form of an ordinance, a ballot question, or any semblance of progress. But what we have seen is wasted time and taxpayer money. Weeks were squandered waiting for an outside opinion from an unbiased attorney who just so happens to have represented Mr. Montgomery 10 years ago.
Mr. Freed.
And even her opinion
Yeah,
stated.
I would ask that he be removed from the council chambers because of that kind of statement.
If you'd like, Mr. Montgomery, I can pause my comments to remind you of your words on July 6th when you asked for quiet while you were speaking. You said it's about
Mr.
decorum
Freed, this
and
has
having
nothing to
respect
do
for your fellow
with the
man.
agenda item.
Yet you continuously disrespect me in
request
these
that this
chambers.
man be removed from the council chambers.
Can
Mr.
you
President,
stick
would you like me?
specifically to what the agenda item is specifically?
Sure,
And
I've
quit
prepared
making
a
the
page.
accusations against council members?
Well, if he
Is that
doesn't believe it, I can
possible?
enter this into the records, Mr. President.
don't-
This is his name and Ms. Bell in a
I don't care.
deposition.
That's not what this
Well, he's
vote is
interrupting
about.
me. I
That's
can't-
not what this
Mr.
vote is
Freed,
about.
I respectfully request that he
Would
be
you like me to
removed.
finish my
He is
comments,
not
Mr.
going to
President?
Can you
speak to
do
the
it
items.
without speaking directly to a council?
I'm speaking
Can
to
you?
you, Mr. President,
No, you're
yes.
speaking about one of my council members.
Correct, and I'm
Stop.
100% allowed to speak about my
not. You're
representative
allowed
government
to speak
under the
specifically
First
to
Amendment
this
of the
agenda item.
Constitution. I apologize that your rules encroach on the First Amendment, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to read my prepared comments.
Would you like to be
because in
removed from
their
the chambers?
totality,
Would that make you feel better?
if you want to violate the Constitution
I'm
and
not
you feel
violating the
emboldened to do
Constitution,
so,
and I'm
then
not
I
here to
encourage
debate
you to do that. But
Get
I would like
specific
to,
to the agenda item and finish, please.
I would like to finish my comments. May I continue?
If you can do it without making accusations against councilmen.
As if that wasn't enough, we also killed a lot of time awaiting a legal opinion from the Attorney General, which was flat out denied. So I ask you, Mr. President, what on earth are we doing? Let's be clear. Mr. Jacobs' job is not to twist the law into a pretzel just to keep our long-serving incumbents in their comfortable chairs. No, his job is to ensure that its city and elected officials and employees abide by the law. That's it. The council is considering giving Mr. Jacobs the authority to further delay what the citizens clearly desire. This is nothing short of mocking the democratic process. We did not elect any of you or appoint the city attorney to be a gatekeeper to the ballot box, but that's precisely what you guys seem keen on becoming. In Title 14, Section 132, Louisiana law prohibits the intentional alteration, falsification, or concealment of any record or document filed or deposited under authority of law in any public office or with any public officer. What Mr. Jacobs is asking Ms. Agee to do, or threatening to compel her to do via litigation, smells a lot like public corruption,
He's
and it
speaking
appears
to
to
number
violate the law.
5, Mr. Freed.
Do not continue to give Mr. Jacobs any more latitude when it comes to the term limits petition. Vote down this ridiculous resolution. Bossier City deserves better than to be laughed out of another courtroom. Thank you.
Mr. Free, if I may,
Yes, sir.
and I would say this, if there's any type of accusation about the mayor or any other councilman sitting up here, the allegation that Ms. Bell has represented Mr. Montgomery in the past in his personal capacity is absolutely false. Ms. Bell was engaged by the Municipal Planning Commission in the Coleman litigation. And she has never, under any circumstances, and in fact, she ran a conflict check. I submitted the names of the mayor and all councilmen to Keene Miller, and I said, please run a conflicts check in order to make sure that neither Keene Miller nor yourself has represented any councilman or the mayor, anybody who would be affected by this. And that is just what Mr. Marriott is saying is outright false. Thank you.
I left the paper there if you want to add it to the record.
You're done. You're done.
David Crockett, 653 Dumaine Drive, Bossier City, Louisiana. Term limits in the November election is the loss, so I just wanted to say that. And of course, I'm now per SADO, we're back to where we were in the previous two items. A vote for this calls for spending taxpayer dollars to see if you can use the legal system to poke holes in a petition legally certified. But note it's entirely premature in the city without standing even to bring such a case. Any presumed harm would occur only if the electorate ratifies term limits into the charter from an allegedly defective process. You may be able to correct that if you think otherwise. What this asks for is the advisory opinion on a hypothetical situation which Louisiana courts cannot give. It's nothing more than a waste of taxpayer resources, but only a waste of the people's money. It wouldn't be a waste of your counselors interested, for counselors interested in fulfilling their own private agendas that require the pursuit of power by the ability to stay in office and the expense of the people's agenda. By grasping at whatever straw they can stop the term limits from enactment. That's what's happening. Let the democratic process play out instead of running into the courts for fatuous reasons. If, as a result of actual controversy emerges down the road, then the city can respond through the challenge in the courts. Or if the council thinks that the petitioning is so defective, then it can use the Charter Review Commission it recently adopted as a vehicle to fix matters after that. Now, Mr. President, my own comments. Bossier Term Limits Coalition is, our position is that we use voter ID, and that includes year of birth. You have a legal problem because you're not enforcing the charter. Secondly, threats of lawsuits are not coming from the Bossier Term Limits Coalition, so they must be coming from the political aristocracy in your council. So the real question is, who is the city attorney representing? It's not the people. The harm is to the electorate, not the councilman. Bossier Term Limits Coalition is not suing Bossier City. Bossier Term Limits Coalition is not suing Bossier City. For us to do so will cost the parish twice. We have never and would never pursue that. Secondly, sue the city would likely delay term limits vote until after the filing for the 2025 elections. That's not our objective. Why would we do that? Bossier Term Limits Coalition is announcing that we're not withdrawing the petition. Our petition is legal, nor would we have a right to do so since the petition is the electorate's petition, not ours. And the certificate of the registrar is the registrar's. It's not ours. Bossier Term Limits Coalition is also announcing that we're going to accomplish 2 additional petitions, likely starting this weekend, one of which will be term limits petition. We'll be announcing at a press conference in the near future what both petitions are. We'll be explaining it to the public. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate your patience.
Additional comments from the public? Huh? Comments from the council? Cast your vote.
Motion carries.
Do we have any reports today?
No, sir. We do have an announcement that the budget workshop.
Budget workshop will be held in the city council chambers following the council meeting on September the 19th, 2023.